You know, right now with the whole Israel-Palestine challenge is taking place, I want to ask you a question here. Jews, small community, 15 million of them, right? A man named Adolf Hitler tried to eliminate all of them. That was his goal. He wanted to get rid of them. So when you look at the charter of Hamas that says their goal is to eliminate Israel off the face of the earth, Sharia law is to what they want to do. That's their charter, not the 2017 one, but the one from 1988. That was kind of Hitler's charter. I want to get rid of Jews, okay? He failed, but at the cost of how many lives? Millions. 6 million, whatever the numbers. We've heard 6, we've heard 20, we've heard 8. Let's say 6 million lives, right? So you have Jews and you have slavery. You have the Holocaust and you have slavery. Both catastrophic. We're not sitting here to compare which is worse than the other. I'm not doing that. Somebody else can go write a book about that and compare it. That is not my specialty. What I want to study is, as a person who's Armenian, Assyrian from Iran, a part of my ethnicity community, sometimes they're victims, but you don't understand what happened to us, you know, the genocide and all this other stuff. And another side is like, yeah, why don't we go out there and do something and make a name for ourselves? So for the history, they can show us that we are drivers, we are leaders, we're going to make it work. But one person's like, well, that's why, because of you don't know what we went through, and our ancestors what we went through. So why do you think the mindset of Jews who have risen in levels of business, of Hollywood, of so many different places, they've made the money, they've done all these things. What do you think is the difference in the mindset of two different communities? I don't know if somebody like yourself have even studied that or investigated it to see what the difference between mindset is. They both had a very tragic history, what happened to them. But on the Jew side, they've stepped up and they become leaders in many different sects. Why do you think that is?
Well, Frederick Douglass had to struggle with this in his book, Up from Slavery. Frederick Douglass said that the worst time on the plantation was at Christmas because slaves were given off from Christmas to New Year's. But the slave master wanted the slaves to interpret freedom as synonymous with self-indulgence. Mm-hmm. So he supplied free rum to the slaves and encouraged them to drink. And he would often have competition between which slaves could outdrink the other slave owners.
Interesting.
He said, so he wanted slaves to interpret freedom as self-indulgence so that they would get so sick that they would be happy to surrender to slavery to man as opposed to slavery to rum.
Wow.
And some slaves bought into that. But others responded to the same challenge by taking that time to visit family members on other plantations. Another one took that time to work and earn, so they can earn money to purchase their freedom. The same exposure, different responses. And I think that's what we have to understand, that we must look at those who chose the more responsible response to circumstance, and you're never defined by your external circumstance. So we must tell the story of those who did not succumb to the temptation to be what the victimizer wanted us to be. But we teach through examples and writing the stories of those who triumphed in the face of slavery. When I talk to young blacks and I tell them of stories of people who were born slaves who died millionaires, some of them went back and purchased a plantation on which they were slaves and took in the destitute family of the slave master.
What a story.
Robert Smalls. He was born in Sumter, South Carolina, and he was on a warship. And he and 6 members of his crew, when the captain went off for dinner, stole the ship and put on the master's cap and came through the various, I'm sorry.
As I said, former slave brought his master's house and served as a collector of the customs. Yes. Robert Smalls.
Right.
Wow, what a story.
But not only that, he became wealthy and because of his heroism turning the ship over. Smalls was celebrated by Lincoln, and as a consequence, he permitted blacks to fight in the Civil War. But after slavery, Robert Smalls was given a commission. He also became a wealthy businessman, went back and purchased a plantation on which he was a slave. And his wife, the slave owner's wife and children were destitute. He took them in and allowed her to sleep in her same bedroom because she didn't realize slavery was over.
Wow.
To me, this is an act of radical grace. And there are other stories of Biddy Mason, a woman who was born in 1818 and walked 1,000 miles behind a wagon with 3 children, one by the slave master. And then she later went to walk behind a wagon to California, where she was freed by the courts. And she was a midwife and saved money to buy property. And she died one of the wealthiest women in Los Angeles. She's a founder of the
Get out of
AME
here.
Church out there.
Wow.
Illiterate, 3 children, and became a wealthy philanthropist.
Unbelievable.
And Elijah McCoy, you don't know that story. Born of fugitive slave parents, was trained in Canada and came back to become, he was an engineer, an inventor. But he was given the worst job at the railroads in Chicago, Elijah McCoy. And Elijah McCoy was given a job of physically oiling the wheels on the trains, right? And it was dangerous. He invented the machine that would automatically lubricate the machine and changing the whole industry so they could then travel faster. And that's why people tried to develop knockoffs, and they said, no, we want the real McCoy. So that's where that expression, the real McCoy, came from, because they wanted his. And he had 17 inventions. He was in the Inventors Hall of Fame. And so I can go on and on about people like that. These are the kind of stories that we tell our young people.
If you ask 100 kids right now, ages 6 to 15, about these 3 names, how many of them would know them?
None of them. That's why what the Woodson Center does with his curriculum, we developed 30 case studies like this around the country. And as part of our, they've been downloaded 117,000 times over the past year. So again, in every state in the union, they're being reviewed.
Who's writing books about these guys?
We are.
You are?
Yes.
You know how Who HQ Penguin has these books for kids that they write, and we have like 600 of these at our house. Our kids have read. I've never heard any of these books, stories of them being written by Who HQ.
We're trying to get children's books written from them. But again, we need to invest in these kinds of things. This is my point. I say to conservatives, and say, if you get more of what you reward and less of what, but why aren't we, if you say you're for American values, if you're for these principles, then why not invest in them, damn it? Don't whine about what the other side is doing. Invest in the things you believe in.
I agree.
The left does it.